Welcome to Phillips Mill Art Talk. I'm Laura Womack. Jen McHugh is our technical director.
Hi, everyone.
And tonight we're very excited to talk with Janine Dunn Wade, whose paintings are gestural artifacts of conversation between the artist and her materials. In her work, there's an ebb and flow, and she says the artist must acquiesce to the dictates of her subject and the paint, and the resulting painting is a relic of that conversation, revealing in one moment the entire artistic process. Janine's paintings, with their vibrant colors and strong brushwork, reveal her joie de vivre and bring her audience along with her. Janine is the first artist to be asked back for a second visit on Art Talk. She was selected by the Phillips Mill Art Committee to be the 2024 Honored Artist for her contribution to the mill and the local art community. Janine has expanded from her floral still lifes that made her reputation to interior scenes and landscapes. Janine Dunn Wade has exhibited widely, including at Ellarslie in Trenton and Woodmere Art Museum. She's been participating regularly in the Phillips Mill Juried Art Show since 1995, winning several awards. Janine earned a BFA from Villanova. She studied in Siena, Italy, Paris, and Guanajuato, Mexico, as well as at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Art Master Classes. Welcome back to Art Talk, Janine.
Thank you very much for having me.
We love to start with the artwork, so let's look immediately. Oh, I just want to invite the audience to join our conversation as well in the Q&A where we can find it easily. Jen put some links in the chat. She's got a Hilma off Klimt, and we might talk about her a little bit tonight. But put your questions and comments in the Q&A, and we will get to all of them before the night is over. Okay. And again, let's take a look at Janine's work. I think first up is Snapdragons. Janine, tell us about this beautiful painting.
This is a theme that I'm really terribly interested in right now in pursuing, and you'll see a lot of this kind of thing. I love doing these tabletop pieces. The tabletop is not really a tabletop. It's a beautiful bathrobe that my dad gave me with all these quilted pieces sewn together. And it's caught my eye so many times that I finally brought it to the studio and put it on the table. And if Jen wants to switch to the next slide.
Buttercups and Jazz.
This is the same exact setup that I worked over again. So I like to get familiar with the subject and then see if I can delve a little deeper. And I do believe in this second piece, I was able to get richer colors and free my brush strokes. And, you know, if you've done it once or twice, it's just bound to get richer and better, I hope.
So, Jen, can we flip back and forth between those two for a minute? Because I would not have guessed that they were the same painting. I see it, of course, when you say it. But there's, you know, not only, I mean, the objects look completely different to me. They look a little bit different arrangement. The colors feels different. Is the setup different at all, Janine?
Let me look at the other piece again. You're right, it is. It is. But Jen, you don't have that where you did the two pieces together, do you?
Oh, that's all right. Jen,
yeah, it doesn't matter. I think mostly I took the big potted plant out from behind. And it's so funny because when I put this together yesterday, I thought, oh yeah, it's the same thing. It didn't even dawn on me because my process is I'm working with this tabletop scene and just moving it into a new realm and trying to go richer and deeper.
Well, Janine, I'm that wasn't meant to be a gotcha question. I mean, I think that it is the same subject. Maybe some of the, you know, maybe the flowers are different. I don't know how long they last, but you know, the tabletop cover, the robe, which I never would have guessed, is the same. And but I just actually I pointed it out because I thank you so much, and you're quick. Yeah, please go ahead.
So it is kind of fascinating to do this. The little pot with the green reflection on the top of it is a pot I've painted over and over, and it's one of the things that just seems to always turn out nicely for me. So I don't know what that came to mind. It's the same table, the angle is different, and some of the items are different. The plate is the same. And the purple and pink little vase on the left-hand side has been reduced and minimized. So on the second piece, it's a lot of the same items, but they've been abbreviated more. And I think the brushwork is a little freer and the colors are just definitely richer.
Yeah, and that I think that's what's so fascinating me about it is that it feels almost completely different. I think the table angle's a lot. I'm fascinated by the difference in the shadow on the, I would say the cooler tone one, the shadow's deeper, a little greener. But you can see that it's the same. So really, I think it really draws out, the artist's eye and the artist's mood, then how much of a difference that can make with a very, very similar subject matter. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks. Let's go on to, they're both really beautiful. Study for August is next up. Sometimes it takes a minute to flip between. And while we're getting that up, Jen has for us in the chat a link to the Guggenheim exhibit with Hilma af Klint, who was a landscape artist who ended up painting abstract but really beautiful colors similar to Janine. So here we are with Study for August.
The interesting thing about this is a lot of paintings are just real knockdown, drag out fights. It just can take forever. The piece that'll be in the mill, I think I've worked on it for almost 3 years, and I put it aside and come back to it. And this piece just fell together, and I was quite pleased with it immediately. Now, the interesting thing is it's a 6x4 painting. And then I immediately turned it into a 24x36 painting. So it was, the bigger one was quite a struggle. And I thought, oh, good, I've got like a little study here that I'm happy with. And I'll just launch it right into the next but bigger piece. And it was quite a challenge. And if you want to turn the of course, when you go bigger and you can't abbreviate things quite as much, you need to add a lot of other things. But this was one of the pieces that was at the mill. And
I remember this is such a beautiful piece and it's so refined, Janine.
Thank you. I think it's fun to see the difference in the sizes and the way they turn out. With the scale differences and even the color differences. Even when you think you're going to just recreate the same thing, it never works that way, which is what I was talking about with the conversation. You look at the subject, you look at the paint, you look at making it the same, and yet it takes on a life of its own every time.
I mean, I remember August, the finished painting at the mill last year, and I loved it. And my memory's not that good. So when I first saw Study for August for tonight, I didn't put them together. I have to tell you, I love Study for August. It's for its own sake. I mean, do you ever think about just leaving them completely loose like that? Or I don't know how you would describe it.
When this was covered, I knew it was complete. The bigger piece was exactly the opposite. And I would say in the 30 years that I've been submitting to the mill, the paintings and the work have changed enormously. And I am tracking more and more towards abstract pieces, as you'll see in some of the upcoming slides.
Okay, let's go forward with Lily's Playground.
So this is the study, and the next one will be, and this is maybe 8 by 15, something like that. And the bigger one is a 24 by 36. This painting was one of the few in my life that I have done because I had an emotional catalyst rather than I was just trying to, surge deeper into visual beauty. This painting came about because my granddaughter, Lily, was born, and I drove down the street the next day and all of the tiger lilies were blooming. And I thought, okay, that's a sign. I have got to do a lily painting. So this is called Lily's Playground, and it's a lot smaller. And the next piece is interesting because it's on a very different subject. I'm sorry, it's on a very different panel. I gessoed very heavily. So this painting, which I put here behind me, is, it started out almost like a, the old Roman paintings, the friezes where the paint would just absorb into the ground. And so there are sections like in the very center where I left it extremely transparent and loose, and other sections where it's very, very thick and heavy with paint. And it was a lot of fun to work that way and explore the dichotomy between thin drips and then thicker impasto layers. And I also was taking lots of liberties. It's the same tablecloth, believe it or not, my robe. And I would take my palette knife and just push it against certain sections, and fun and exciting things were happening. Lines would appear, and sometimes you did that and it was, oh, this is fabulous, I like the way that turned out. And then the next time it would be, uh-oh, that was a problem, let's go back and rework this. So it's getting more exploratory the way I'm working now, and it's just a lot of fun and I'm enjoying it.
Again, this is, I think we've got the two together. This Daydreams with Lily is a much more finished painting, obviously. Oh, I thought we had the two together. I could be wrong. And then to look at the study, I mean, when I saw the study, I will have to say, it just delighted me. And it's kind of interesting to see them that way because there's a lot of brightness to the study. And maybe that's some of it is the photography, but it just made me so happy to see it. And then it's almost like it comes into resolution before your eyes. Different subject matter, I get it, but very similar elements, wouldn't you say, Janine?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The setup is absolutely pretty much the same. And then as it got bigger, things developed and new pieces came in. And it is quite a bit brighter than it seems here, but not nearly as bright as the alla prima style of the first, and the linen surface, which just kept the colors on the top rather than anything soaking in.
Interesting. All right. Well, if any of you would like to join us, please join us with your questions and answers. We take technical, we take inspiration, just put them in the Q&A for us. So I wanted to ask you, Janine, because I've been looking at your work for years and years. You used to be on the art committee, and I remember when you decided to go full time as a painter, and just the things you bring into the mill. They bring with them a happiness. And I wonder, is that the color, or what is that joy that is coming in with your paintings?
What a fabulous question. It's the joy of painting, for one thing. Sloshing around in that paint is always phenomenal, and the colors are amazing. The colors you can buy now compared to what the Impressionists could buy are incredible. And for me, the two things that really move me are brushstroke and and exciting colors. I just love to put like oranges with pinks, and in the same value, it creates a really nice effect. So, you know, for me, the purpose of painting is to create joy and happiness. And I just had a wonderful experience with a woman who has a phenomenal art collection. You know, Diana Resick. She just bought one of my big new paintings, and she told me that she's so happy just looking at it. And it just brings me joy that people can be so happy looking at it. And another example is I had a show where a woman on opening night bought a tiny little piece that had a clementine and some flowers. And it reminded her of her mom, and she just had to have the painting because it evoked this memory and this emotion of her mom. So paintings can hit you in so many different ways. But for me, the bottom line is the colors and the brush strokes.
And do you ever, and Diana's here tonight, so hello, Diana. Thank you for joining us. And for all you do for the art committee and for our arts community. Do you think that your colors are pretty? A lot of times they're pretty. And what I love is there's sort of a freedom and a sort of a abandonment to the pretty, because a lot of times I think when in different aspects of culture, but definitely in painting as well, you know, pretty is not considered always to be serious. And I think that's sort of the masculine history to critique and etc. Or is that just me? What do you think?
Oh, I completely agree. And it's kind of been, you know, being a slight woman, I can sometimes come off looking like I'm 12. And I feel like sometimes I have to fight to be taken seriously. And I'm not going to be embarrassed by the fact that I do like pink. It's great. I think it's a gorgeous color. Pinks, orange, pastels, sherbet colors, they're right up my alley. It's so funny, when one of my sons was growing up, his mother told me flat out, look, you got to quit wearing pink. It just doesn't give you the right image. And I thought, no, I still like pink. So I'm going to try to go for the image of being a really serious painter, even though I like pinks. But I'm gratified because more and more artists are using these beautiful, incredible colors. So it depends on how you handle it.
Yeah, and I want to say I think pink is great, and I was always told tailored and, you know, classic, and so I feel freed by your pink, Janine, and all your sherbets and etc. So
Thank
I
you.
see
And
Ken's nodding.
I've been surprised at people that I thought would never like the paintings that are in these rich hues are suddenly saying, oh yeah, I really like that one. And I thought, oh, that would be the last one they liked. But I'd just like to go back and say thank you to my dear friend Diana, and how incredibly happy I am to be in her beautiful art collection. So
yeah, that's great. Okay, so we do have some questions. Let's get to a couple of those, and then we'll go back to some paintings.
Okay. First one's from Carolina Bromberg. She asks, in creating your composition and light orientation, do you pick a certain time of day, and how do you pick your objects? Your technique of abstract is familiar to Cézanne's.
you know, I'm crazy about one of Cézanne's quotes. He says, when the color attains richness, the objects obtain form. So with the right richness of color, form is created. And I think that's a motto that I like to follow through with.
You know, and Janine, I remember when we talked before that you're quite the scholar in this as well. I mean, you can quote all of the greats. You do a lot of reading about their point of view and their philosophy. Do you find that that goes into, does that feed more the creative process or technique, or what do you find in those books about painters and painting?
You know, a lot of times you find comfort. Oh, good, I'm not the only one. And you find like you know, you'll be at a point in a painting and you think it's pretty good, it's okay, but you're not quite satisfied. And I just finished reading this incredible book, Matisse, A Life. And he said, you know, risk ruining the painting, push it to the next level, or you'll stagnate. You just have to keep doing that. And it's okay to sacrifice the painting. It may be okay. It's still very painful though.
So, and I really want to get to, we've got some great questions. So, but I really want to follow up on that because, you know, I heard a photographer say at one point, you know, the difference between a professional photographer and an amateur was the number of bad photographs in the bin, you know. And that you know, that, but and then you look at what's out there and what's selected by the jurors or by collectors or, you know, the scholars of work. How do you know when something's done? How do you know when it's finished? How do you know what's right?
It is the absolute age-old question, and I have done it so many times, and I've seen so many other artists do it. You have something that's fresh and alive, and you're maybe, you know, half of painting is seeing, knowing what you're seeing, and that's the hardest part of it. So if oh, I'm totally blanking out. If what were
Okay.
we talking about, Laura?
When do you know that it's done? And I
Oh, right,
wonder,
good.
yeah,
There's a feeling of completion. There's no longer that feeling of, okay, it just needs this and it just needs that. And if a painting is going really well, instead of thinking it needs more, you think, oh gosh, it doesn't need anything else. Moving on to the next section, but there's a balance too. If you overwork a certain section, you have to bring the next section up or take the other section down. So, but for me personally, there's an emotional spot where I say, okay, I'm happy and it's not going to get any better than this.
thank you. Jen, what other great questions do we have?
Okay. Oops. Sorry, just opened something. I brought this up because Cynthia wants to know what is the difference in the panel surfaces between these two paintings?
I like to work on a hard surface, so they're both hard surfaces. The smaller piece is on oil primed linen that's affixed to a board, whereas the other panel, it was a big, huge Da Vinci board, and I added like 4 coats of gesso to it. So the gesso absorbed a lot more than the linen would ever absorb.
All right, thank you for that. And we've got another one, Jen?
Yep. One more. Maureen asked, do you work in any other medium such as watercolor or pastel?
You know, I have gone through periods where I did a huge amount of watercolor and then I did a huge amount of pastel. And right now, some of my newer paintings, I'm working a lot with a combination of, I'll start the painting with pastels and get the composition and layout in pastel pencils. And I'm working more and more to let some of that show through. I find if, and as Laura had mentioned in the introduction, so many art forms develop over a period of time where you read the book and see the story unfold, or in cinema, the movies unfold. In painting, the whole artistic process is unveiled at one moment. And I think it's really great and rich if you can show the pentimento or the earlier steps. And in certain spots, they'll work beautifully and look great. And in other spots, they won't. And you just have to keep working through all those different areas and feeling what's working and what needs to be gone over again.
Wonderful. Thanks for those great questions. Keep them coming while we go back and take a look at Dad. Dad's up next. And Janine, while Jen pulls that up, you don't do people very much, or even parts of people.
It's true. And it's funny because when I was a student, I was crazy about doing people. I have a sweet and wonderful 90-year-old dad. And when I go to visit him in Florida, I will bring an entire suitcase full of easels and panels, and I'll set up my paints just where he usually has his morning coffee. And I brought this up because it took me maybe 4 or 5 hours to set this up. I kept thinking, no, something has to pull your eye further back. Let me go move that chair. Oh, I'd like the flowers to repeat. Let me see if I can move this here and move that there. Although I did know that my dad would come out and sit there. So it was a fun piece. And so many of the pieces are just so memorable because they take you back to a time in your life, a place where you were, and even just remembering how the sun was hitting the chair that day, or how your dad was sitting in another chair.
So Janine, this painting strikes me, the layperson, as a challenging painting to get the depth of, and maybe that's just my perspective as a layperson, but I think it could come out very flat and very sort of stacked. How do you achieve that depth at
Uh,
that angle?
It's very interesting that you asked that, but if you'll notice, I've incorporated an aperture in the composition, and the aperture is the side of the wall outside the door on the left and on the right. There's just a hint of it. But if you create an aperture like that, you're automatically helping the eye go down. And if you'll also notice, all the bluer colors are in the front and the hot warms are in the back, which is sort of counter what it usually is. Usually your cools will recede and your warms will come forward. So it was sort of a challenge that I took on. And I layered very, very heavy paint in the pot in the front. And then I repeated that in some of the foliage in the very back. And I think that helps your eye kind of go back and forth.
I mean, I would have thought that, yeah.
It's quite a departure. This is not the sort of thing I usually do, but I am in a transition period and moving into a new stage of freer, more abstract. And again, here I was discussing with you, the book is in pastel pencil, and I like the way that looked. I didn't feel it was at all necessary to paint that in a certain color. And my dad's face has got that white, bright sun on one piece. So I was just playing around with the effects I could get, looking at the real life situation.
Yeah, and I'm just surprised that that bright yellow chair in the background doesn't take you away from him, but somehow you made it work. Yeah. Okay, next up, Cheshire window.
One of the really fun things about you interviewing me, Laura, is I don't have to think about if there's a jury. I can pick whichever paintings I like.
Yes.
And this is one of my favorite paintings. I like to also play with pieces of shape and color, as if it was almost a puzzle. And if you look below the window, there is a white section that you might not know what it is, which also gives me great delight. I like to incorporate a little bit of a mystery or a surprise or a Bonnard moment of, wait, I've scanned this painting 4 times and finally I'm noticing that little dog there. So there's a lot of different elements, but this is one of my personal favorites, and I don't know that it would be very well received by jurors, but I put it in because I really like it.
Well, that's a great lead into how do you decide what to give the jurors? I mean, maybe I don't know if you want to talk about for the Phillips Mill Juried show or just general. You're in a lot of shows. How do you decide? I mean, that just seems like consulting an oracle to me. I don't know how you artists do it.
You know, it's partly a gut feeling, but it's also partly just the roll of the dice. It's potluck. You know, I remember the year that I won the patrons. That was not the piece I was going to enter. I had picked out a different piece, but the frame didn't come in on time, and I had to find out. I had to pick something else right away and just go down to the mill with it. So I've always thought that was kind of like God's hand. You know what I mean? It wasn't my choice, and it worked out so beautifully.
Yeah, I saw that. I also like, well, as Jen takes us to the next version, Cheshire Window, I think that what's interesting here is you've gone for a lot more darks. You know, I think of your paintings as very bright. You have a lot more darks, but it's still pretty. It still makes me happy to look at it.
That's a very good and interesting point. You know, the other thing that happens is you just get soaked into the painting and it takes on a life of its own again. Maybe the first stroke you put down was darker and the rest of the painting had to fall in line with that. But I tried to you know, walk the line between abstract and realism, using a lot of the color that I see and values that I see, but then adding or tweaking to make it a better painting.
Yeah. And then I think we see, and we'll get the questions next. I think we see a lot of motion in, you know, the eye is going around in this painting, you know. Are you doing that with the whites going, you know, the whites circling us and drawing us around, or how did you accomplish that?
You know, Laura, that's a really great point. You go from the white flower in the front and circle around, and the shape of the leaves just brings you right into the dendrobium blue flower, and the angle of the tablecloth then drags you right back down to the white flowers. And in the one on the right, the flowers in the front are not as crisp and bright as I was at that point trying to make the paintings, the flowers in the middle, a more focal point and sharper and brighter. Oh. Because the sun was hitting there at that point.
Yeah, there are more darks on the left, obviously. Fewer whites, but they're more defined. It's interesting. Yeah. Jen, we've got some questions, and thank you all for sharing them with us. It really enriches the conversation. What do we have?
I'm going to keep these up because Amy says, as insight, Janine possesses an exuberance as a painter, as an interpreter of light, shade, perspective, forms, floral, movement, and posture. Janine grants her personal artistic exuberance to exert itself. Janine has the ability to not self-censor her perceptions. The viewer absorbs this, shares her energy. The pleasure for the viewer be in the transfer of energy.
Wow, that was beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
She hit it right on. I mean, there is an energy. Yeah.
Well, yeah, energy is so important. It's so important. And it keeps your eye moving. And I just love what you just said. I can't thank you enough. I wish I had put those words together. Thank you.
Maybe we can keep that copy for her, Jen. I don't know if there's a way to do that. Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, we've got a couple of other questions.
Okay, Karen wants to know, do you varnish works that include pastel?
Never. Oh, wait a minute. If they contain like pastel pencil on a very underneath layer, I might, but it's a very personal thing. I have with pastels, if I'm just working in soft pastels, I never varnish because I feel like the beauty of it is the application of layers and the the varnish or the spray is going to just compress that and take away from the look. I've ruined so many things that I just never varnish. With the oil paintings, it's got a lot to do with the painting itself. Like in the example with the lily painting, the little one on the oil primed linen, I would definitely, and I did varnish that. Whereas the heavily gessoed piece, I would take away from the look a lot if I varnished that. So it's a call on each painting.
And I think you can only make those calls when you've had a lot of experience. I mean, it's just such a, complicated, multidimensional axis of things interacting.
It absolutely is. And sometimes it's a real hard decision. But usually if it's a piece that shouldn't be varnished, I know it as I'm working, and I'm not going to risk taking away from that matte look that is giving it the beauty in this particular instance.
Yeah. Okay. Jen?
The last one, Maureen asked, are the flowers in your paintings from your garden?
A lot of them are. A lot of them are. And a lot of times, especially, during the winter, I go to the grocery store and I'll stand there like for an hour trying to pick out which ones will go together and which ones I like. And I always use real flowers, even if they're dead and crunchy at that point. It feels right to be painting from real flowers.
You ever think about painting them dead and crunchy?
Oh, I have for sure. And we'll see an example if we get to certain
Okay.
paintings.
All right, let's do that and keep those questions coming. Next up is Mad Hatter, and you just tell us where you want to go, Janine.
Well, this is one of my newer paintings, and it does show a lot of what I was just talking about. I started the piece with pastel pencils in colors. And if you look at the plate on the bottom center, the dark blue is part of my initial drawing. And you can see that in lots of other areas. If you look at the very top left of the tablecloth, it's the same robe that I have been enjoying so much. That section is, the kind of ambery colors that are striped. Exactly, Jen. That is like one layer of paint and not touched again. Whereas the flowers in the yellow flowers in the center, I really wanted to go a lot heavier with that and build up the look of the paint in that. You can also see there's a lot of sections that are just dripping, and it's really fun to do that. And when I started this, I would do the pastel pencils only in the very preliminary stages. But as I got into it more, there is a bit of pastel on the little pink vase. There's a yellow strip behind the little tiny pink vase. Beautiful. And I added some orangey tones of pastel on top of that. And it just made the whole painting more cohesive. It picked up the oranges in other areas. And another thing that makes me really happy about this painting is that the plate on the most foreground, it's just never going to stay on that table. It's in the process of falling. But I thought, you know what, I can make it stay with my little paints. And I really wanted something else there to bring you more forward in the painting. So I just put it right in and left it there.
But that's such a great technique too. I mean, I in a way, isn't that sort of a classic thing to bring tension to the painting?
Tension, and I think it's fun. It's another one of those little mysterious things that people might not notice, and it gives you reasons to go back in and look again and be happy enjoying the colors while you're looking and exploring what else is in there.
Yeah. We have a question related to that. We'll come back to that in a minute. But I just wanted, before we stop talking about this painting, I want to just say I'm very fascinated by the background too, because I don't think that's your normal background. It seems a little bit different, and yet, of course, it echoes. You've got the flowers on the outside in the background of your still life, right?
Exactly. That is a really ugly plastic picnic tablecloth that I threw in the back, and it just really excited my eye. And it's amazing how wonderfully different paint can make something look. So that was really fun. And I think on this particular piece, the angle of the table is something that goes a long way to creating interest and keeping your eye happy as it moves around.
Yeah, to me, this is very unlike a lot of your work. I mean, you see the happy colors and the flowers and the tabletop, but the tension of that plate, the way that the angle of the table, and then, that background, as we look through your work, there's a lot of order, to your compositions. And even though, like in the last one, when we looked at Cheshire Window, there's a lot happening on that table. But it took us around in a circle, and it was almost classical. Whereas this is like, there's a lot more, I don't want to say chaos, but it's a little, the subject is a little edgier.
I would absolutely agree with that. One of the things is the tension of the plate that's not going to fall off the table is counterposed by the tension of the yellow flower falling off the top part of the piece. And it's I would say it's interesting to say that the excitement and motion of the table itself is almost minimal compared to the motion in the background. And I think that dichotomy can be very effective.
Yeah, interesting. All right, we'll take those questions before we move on. Jen, I think we've got a ringer in there.
Yes, someone, this question was planted. A Tim Wade, I don't know if you're related to him or not. He said the Mad Hatter tabletop. How did you keep that plate in the front of the table from crashing to the floor?
Just the magic of paint. Does what you want.
But I like what you said before about the yellow, keeping it from falling off on the other end. I hadn't noticed that, so there was a subtle order in there. That was really interesting. Okay, Jen.
And Jim Feld asked, he is interested in how fast you work. How long does it take for you to finish a painting?
That is such an interesting question. If we go back to the August painting, that little 4x6 painted itself, quick and easy. And if you wanted to measure 4x6 into the 24x36, I think it took me 5 times as long for each 4x6 section. It just took forever, and I scraped out pieces and put them back in. It took me months and months of really, really working on it.
Yeah. Love them both. Okay. So, thank you for those questions, Jen. Thank you in the audience. Keep them coming. We've got a little more time. Let's look at some more pictures. Peonies, pansies, and badgers is next. Now, there's a lot going on here, Janine, but it's much more organized, right?
It's very interesting for me to hear your observations. I would not agree with that. I would think that the Mad Hatter tabletop was maybe more organized, but it could also be because this painting probably took me 2.5 years. I had started it and I was terribly pleased with certain sections, and then it just crashed. I couldn't seem to make it work. And then I'd see it in my studio and I'd say, look, why can't you make that work? Let's give it a go. Let's try it. And I just kept going over it and working it again and again and again, and adding more sections and scraping out other sections. And it's very interesting because the blue vase was initially transparent, and you could see a lot through the vase stems to the table, to the chair behind it. And the more I worked, this thing comes over you where you stop thinking. You just like, you're not happy, and you keep pushing to make yourself happy in what's happening on the canvas. So suddenly, when I had promised myself I wasn't going to make any more major changes, the vase was blue. And that's when that guy, Tim Wade, came downstairs, and he said, and I was waiting for him to give me his favorite line, "Well, you've ruined it now," or "It was much better yesterday." Those are the lines that really thrill your heart. But anyway, he said, "Oh, I love it. This is great." So I was like, okay, wow, excellent. And, I feel like there's a surprise element in this too. I'm hoping it's another one of those Bonnard moments where you're not exactly sure what everything is, and you look around and then you zone into the little guy sitting on the chair. And I mean, has everybody noticed who that is? And I put his name in the title as a little hint.
Ah, it's Badger.
Yep,
That's not the famous Badger, is it?
it is. It is. So I do have this wonderful group called Muga, and Muga means when you get so intensely involved in the painting process that it's not just thinking, your whole being goes into what you're trying to accomplish. And Joanne, one of our dear friends, is got this lovely tribe of beautiful little dogs, and one of them is Badger, who I know we've lost recently, so that's very sad, but I'm terribly happy to have him in my painting.
He's a wonderful dog. What a great memorial. It's a beautiful painting.
And did you see him in there, Laura?
I did not. So I had to be told that he was there, Janine. So thank you. That made it all the nicer. Yeah. Okay, next is wildflowers. And this seems very classically Janine, but darker.
So I was at my sister-in-law Laura's wedding, and she had this gorgeous bouquet in the windowsill, and I thought, I've just got to paint that. And I painted it twice, and this was the first one, and it's very small, 6 by 6, and then I blew it up to, I'd say maybe a 10 by 10, possibly 12 by 12.
It's beautiful. I'm liking the very bright blues in the one on the right, and yet you still have the darks, like the leaves are even darker. Yeah, Janine, we have a bunch of the questions keep coming in, which is wonderful. We love to see that. We've got lots more paintings, but this is a rare opportunity to talk to you. So let's take those questions.
Okay, Patricia Hutton just has a comment. I'm excited about the possibility of storytelling with the fantasy interiors.
Oh, isn't that interesting? And Patricia is my gallerist. She's got a lovely gallery in Doylestown, and I am really excited that she likes this new venue that I'm going on, because I'm having so much fun doing things like the Mad Hatter and this Pansies and Badger piece. I like the tabletop motif and the colors, and so I'm hoping to launch into a whole new series of that kind of a painting. And the thought of adding stories to it, or maybe starting with the story and putting things out on the table that could go with it. So we'll see where that lands. I'm excited to get busy on that whole process.
Nice.
Someone wanted to know, anonymous, how do you pick your subjects?
You go through your day and you go, "Ooh, would that be good to paint? Would that be good to paint? And you pull out your iPhone and you know, move things around. And I have in my studio a whole lot of still life objects. And then it's just a long process of putting them out on the table, changing the tablecloth. But something catches your eye, something that you're willing and wanting to look at for a very long time, and keep exploring and moving. So, you know, the word energy came up before. I think that you have to establish some kind of an energy and beauty and color harmony within the setup to make it something that you really want to spend the time on to do a whole painting.
And this is Janine's second time on Art Talk. And the first one we were we visited her in her studio. And so we did look at that, the setup, and we talked about that. So perhaps if you would like to go to our YouTube channel, which you can reach through the Art Talk page on Phillips Mill, you can find that link. Okay, and Jen, who's up next with the questions?
Okay, Beatrice Bork wants to know, during the process of painting, do you enjoy painting with or without music? And if music, any preference, or does it change the mood of the piece?
Isn't that a great question? It absolutely does. I like to listen to all kinds of different things. I'm a big Bach person. I've suddenly been listening to more and more jazz, and so and it's also interesting because in the beginning stages of the painting where I'm not feeling as free, it's a process where it's hard to get into it. Once you're into it, you can, you know, listen to the music a little bit more. But in the beginning, I have to have something really quiet and classical so that I can just focus on the composition and the initial block in and color.
Okay. Maureen wants to know, are your paintings available for sale through your website?
You know, I don't really do that. Patricia Hutton has this lovely gallery in Doylestown, and you know, I have shows in various different places.
And her work is, she's the honored artist. Her honored artist piece is up for sale starting this weekend, this coming weekend at Phillips Mill on River Road, just north of New Hope. So we hope to see you there for that. Thanks for that question. Jen, what else?
Okay. Another couple. Oh, here's a question. Claire wants to know, do you ever feel creatively stumped?
Absolutely. You know, if you, I had gone to Japan in the spring to visit my daughter Mary, who moved there, and while she was working, I was working also, and I think I spent 6 or 7 hours, and I was thoroughly disgusted with absolutely everything I had produced. So you get stumped, and you know, you have to kind of shake it up and change it somehow. And I had just recently bought these really lovely pigment sticks. So it's oil in a pastel shaped stick. And the two paintings are Mount Fuji and Under the Shadow. Anyway, they're two paintings that I was disgusted with. And at like the last seconds of the workday, I took these big oil sticks and made some radical changes in the paintings, and I was suddenly much happier with them. And I feel like it's part of my transition. I'm looking for new and different things in the paintings to create excitement, and this is a new way to do it. So I went around the bend on that. I hope I answered the question.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Beatrice.
There are a couple of thoughts that let's see, we heard from Amy before. We'll record that. Jen, let's get Jean involved.
Okay. She said, much like Janine's paintings, her joie de vivre makes me smile. She loves what she does, and it's apparent when she explains her process. I met her over 40 years, and she's just as enthusiastic about art as she was in Paris.
Wow,
Thanks, Jean. Thank you.
that's really nice. So Janine, congratulations on being the honored artist for our 95th show at Phillips Mill. Well deserved. Thank you for all the joy that your paintings bring us. And thank you for all the joy that you bring us. Thank you for joining us on Art Talk.
Laura, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk about this subject I love so much. And thank everybody who joined us tonight. And Jen, I don't know if we could never do it without you. Thank everybody. I'm so pleased.
Very good. Thank you all for joining us for our special guest tonight. This is a production of Phillips Mill Art Talk, and next month in October, it's already October, we have the work of Frida Williams, an artist from Trenton, who is, she paints the people and the places, the streets of Trenton. So we're really looking forward to talking with her, with our guest producer, Mary Flamer. Jen is our technical producer. Thank you so much, Jen.
Oh, so much fun as always.
And Jean Mahitch is our show producer, and we thank her for all she does. And I'm Laura Womack, and good night.